How to convince anyone of anything. Much love, welcome in, Trav here. And you can't actually convince anyone of anything, but we're going to cover some techniques, rhetorical techniques, which give you a very good chance of convincing anyone of anything and will allow you to communicate your idea to everyone. Everyone will at least consider what you have to say using these techniques. I think this is worth doing. It's a skill that I've been working on developing, studying how arguments and belief systems work. And it's necessary because of the types of discussions we're having, covering complex subjects, using three-dimensional thinking, using perspective as we look at really controversial subjects as well, where people really have their minds made up. And what we find is, oh man, people are so stuck in their ways, they're so closed-minded, you can't convince them anything, and we look at people from afar and think these people are dumb, they're loonies, they're crazy, they have no credibility, why do they believe this? Why can't they see how wrong they are? So we'll talk about how to actually convince people of things here. And in order to, there's various steps, and we're basically going to cover what not to do, how to treat someone entering the gray area, and communicating that you understand their position, and then number 5 would be actually explaining your position. So the first thing, what not to do, we're going to move inside here. I think that made a good intro, but let's move inside. First thing, what not to do. If you call someone stupid, crazy, loony, it's not a good rhetorical technique. Emotionally, they're going to close to you immediately. They're going to say, fuck you, I'm not going to listen to you. Why would I listen? You have no respect for me, right? Also, if we use blanket statements like always, never, we communicate that not only are we don't really know, we haven't really studied the position, we're speaking in black and white, it's not going to be very effective either. So instead, what we want to do is treat them with respect and say, it's smart, you're smart, it's rational, I understand where you're coming from, I get that makes sense to you, it's totally reasonable to think that. Statements like this allow you to connect and respect them and for them to see that you respect you. Now, talk about entering the gray. Generally think, like, in an issue of black and white, if you're trying to move someone from the white to the black or see the black, you need to enter the gray. What I mean by entering the gray is seeing things as really complex and contextual. This is the opposite of using statements like always and never. Like sometimes, sometimes there's pros and cons. I understand there's real, because when we say always and never, again, it communicates we haven't actually studied, we don't really understand their position. So entering the gray is you start to look at their side and frame it as a contextual thing that's unclear. There's no white and black, it's just there's these gray areas, and it can be confusing, right? So once we're doing that, we can eventually open them up to entering or getting them to see the black-white version. But, if issues of black versus white, you want to really enter the gray with respect for them. However, this is all leading up to, in ways to describe, to understand where they're coming from. No one is ever going to take an effort to understand where you're coming from, what your perspective is, what you're trying to communicate, what you're trying to convince them, if you do not do the same for them. And in order to really convince people, you need to be able to counter or address concerns and objections they have. In order to do that, you need to have a good understanding of them and their perspective. In order to do that, you need to research their position, not only the rational, but also the emotional, because everything passes through the emotional brain to reach the rational brain. Because if you don't do this, if you don't understand them, again, they're never going to make an effort to understand you. So you need to do things like not only say stuff like, I get where you're coming from, I see where you're coming from, okay, that makes sense, but actually repeat their position back to them in a way that makes sense to them. Like, let me see if I get this correctly, I'm trying to understand where you're coming from. that you believe, like you feel that this and this, and not just these are the facts, but these are the emotions. It makes sense to be afraid for this reason, or it makes sense to be angry for this reason. I get that. I feel those same emotions, right? So connect with them on the emotional level, connect with them, get the sort of facts that they believe in, but it's very, very important to understand the specific emotion, what is driving them, and from where. And also at this point, it makes sense to ask a lot of questions. So if we're going to convince someone, it's counterintuitive to start off by asking them questions, but it indicates that we're actually interested in their position. We want to know, we want to make sure we understand where they're coming from, we want to get them. Right? It was common to come in and say, someone says something totally that's just, factually wrong, and it's like, God, why do you believe that? You're crazy, you conspiracy theorist, loony bin crazy. It's like, that is not going to work. It's going to drive them away. Always, never. That is going to close them off. They're going to go start petitions instead. Why do you feel that way? Okay, what's motivating you? Is there emotion behind this? Is it like, are you scared for that reason, or angry for that reason, or, excited about that, That is going to be very, very, very effective. And once you've done that, once you've treated them with respect, you've entered the gray area around their position, you've asked questions, you've communicated with them, you've communicated with them that you understand where they're coming from, their position emotionally as well as rationally. At that point, just due to their guards are down, and due to reciprocation, they're going to be open up to understanding and hearing out your idea. Once, like, I get it, right? I get where you're coming from. Now is it all right if I explain where I'm coming from? And, in these things, if we want to counter people's arguments, first we deal with the emotional. And once the emotional is dealt with, we can approach the rational. And the best way for rational people who are actually really smart is showing graphs, and showing pros and con charts and stuff like that. That's entering the gray. Is okay, there's pros and cons to this. There is percentage chance of this, percentage chance of that, and so on. And that will get people to really think. And that's a good way to access the rational brain. Well, generally, this stuff works pretty well. As you can see on the channel, we have complex discussions, and people are mostly down for it. And that's because I really come with the approach that you're smart, people are actually open-minded, people are actually willing to consider. If you come in with the approach that people are dumb, people are loony, people are crazy, people are closed-minded, you're not going to be able to convince them. And you come in guns blazing, attacking, you're just going to make their beliefs even stronger and have the opposite approach. It's going to be really frustrating for everyone. You might feel that you're so smart and all that, but the goal is not to feel smart, but it's to see each other and communicate ideas and allow the best ideas to live through Darwin competition of ideas. And in order to do that, we need to connect, we need to respect, we need to enter that gray area, we need to understand where they're coming from, their emotions, and we need to understand their logic, and then we need to respectfully present our own with the blacks and the whites. I said too many times in this video. Fuck it, YOLO, one take. Much love. Let me know what you think in the comments. Did I convince you in this that anyone can be convinced? Not of anything, but anyone can be open-minded about anything. I believe so. Use this approach, try it out, let me know how it goes. Leave me a comment, tell me what you think. Much love. Much love. Take action, see you in the comments.